Revealed. The amazing transformation of a lazy boy who discovered the incredible power of time. Jake stared at the blank screen, fingers hovering above the keyboard, heart caught in a frustrating dance between desire and complacency. At 24, he felt trapped in a cycle of mindless gaming, pizza boxes littering the floor like a graveyard of post-apocalyptic dreams. The cornfields surrounding the quaint Midwestern town flickered past his window, a vibrant reminder of the life he wasn't living. He could hear his father's gruff cough from the garage, the sound of a weary man who had watched his son slide away into a world void of ambition. Every disappointed glance his father cast his way felt like a heavy stone sinking in Jake's stomach, stirring up a mixture of resentment and inadequacy. The impending job fair loomed over him like a dark cloud. His mom's concerned pleas didn't help. They only intensified the sting of pressure. "You need to do something, Jake," she insisted, her words cutting like a ticking clock, counting down the moments he could take action or remain a shadow of himself. But taking action felt like climbing a mountain he didn't want to scale. He was no longer just the lazy boy, he was a man paralyzed by expectation and inertia. Later that night, he found himself wandering the almost deserted streets, away from the video game glow that had become his sanctuary and prison. Shadows flickered under the streetlights as he walked, the cool air brushing against his skin, stirring something deep within him. Out of nowhere, he stumbled upon Mr. Thompson, his elderly neighbor, sitting on his porch like a sentinel watching over the town's sleeping streets. The old man's eyes twinkled with the wisdom of years long past, as if he could see the heavy cloak of insecurity draping over Jake's shoulders. "Time, my boy," Mr. Thompson began, the rasp in his voice a soothing balm to Jake's turbulent thoughts. "Time is more than just a ticking clock. It's what you choose to fill it with dreams or regrets." Each word sliced through Jake's mental fog. At that moment, he felt a flicker of understanding, but it was swiftly consumed by doubt. Did he even have dreams left to chase? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Jake's heart raced as excitement twisted with fear. That night, standing in darkness, he had found an old camera in the attic, dust-covered and forgotten. He began to explore the world through the lens, capturing the hidden beauty of his neglected surroundings. Each click opened a door to creativity, igniting a passion he'd long buried beneath a pile of video game controllers and fast food wrappers. But with passion came a whirlwind of uncertainty, the voices of friends echoing in his mind, skeptical and dismissive. As he scrambled to share his photographs, self-doubt crawled in like an unwelcome guest. What if he wasn't good enough? What if their laughter overshadowed his efforts? The fear clawed at his insides like a persistent itch, gnawing at the edges of his newfound confidence. Jake was left standing at a precipice, staring down into the abyss of his own potential and inadequacy. The weight of expectation from his family and his community loomed larger each day, a chorus of doubt ringing in his ears. As he prepared for his first exhibition, he had to confront not only the critics around him but the deepest beliefs he held about himself. Would he embrace this path or retreat into the safety of inaction? The tension crackled in the air, urging him to take the leap, an irresistible challenge that would either light the fire of transformation or extinguish it in an instant. The day of the exhibition dawned. Gray clouds loomed overhead, casting a muted light over the dusty town square. Jake paced in the cramped confines of his room, each step echoing the turmoil in his mind. The camera felt heavy in his hands, a tangible reminder of the journey he was attempting to undertake. Would the photographs he'd taken even reflect the vision he felt within? He had spent hours editing their colors, perfecting the angles, but no amount of preparation could erase the self-doubt spiraling in his gut. Groaning, he threw himself onto his bed. Images of the past few weeks flooded his mind, moments of clicking the shutter, followed by hours of self-criticism. Each photograph was not just a testament to his newfound passion. It was a mirror reflecting his inadequacies back at him. Pausing for a moment, he fought back tears, fearing they would wash away the glimmers of hope he had fought so hard to cultivate. His phone buzzed, a text from his mother, wishing him luck. The warmth of her words wrapped around his shaking hands, but he quickly tossed the device aside, unable to confront the sentimentality so easily. He could picture her, eyes shimmering with pride, despite knowing he feared failure more than he craved approval. Clenching his fists, he rose and set his gaze on the camera. This was no longer merely a lens, it was his ally in the battle against complacency. Jake arrived early at the exhibition space, a local community center adorned with banners and spotlights that felt foreign to a boy who spent most of his days cloistered indoors. The walls were bare canvas for dreams yet to be explored. He hung his photographs carefully, smoothing out creases and adjusting the placement until each shot felt like a piece of his heart on display. A mix of anticipation and anxiety tightened in his throat as he observed the growing crowd buzzing with curiosity. The moment arrived when the doors swung open, and the flood of attendees poured in. He stood at the back, fighting the urge to scuttle away. Each laugh and chatter sliced through his resolve, igniting memories of harsh judgments from his peers. Yet, among the constant hum, he heard snippets of admiration directed at his work, a reluctant spark ignited within, uncertain but undeniable. Stepping out from his comfort zone, he began to engage with visitors, sharing the stories behind his photographs. As he spoke, something remarkable began to shift. With every question they asked, the confidence that had cowered in the shadows started to blossom. People seemed genuinely interested in his perspective, and slowly, he realized this was his opportunity to embrace not only his art but himself. But as the initial wave of excitement receded, a familiar figure stepped into the light, a classmate from high school, arms crossed, wearing a bemused expression. Jake's stomach dropped. Here was the embodiment of his fear, the voice in his head that had tried to drown out his passion since the beginning. Questions flared into existence. Would his presence validate Jake's fears? Was he merely waiting for a chance to ridicule? The pull of old insecurities tugged at Jake, threatening to collapse the fragile bubble of growth he'd begun to build. But as he stood his ground, something within him flickered resolutely. He was no longer just a lazy boy. He was a man choosing to reclaim his passion. As the moment hung in the balance, he prepared to confront not just his classmate but the very essence of who he had been and who he aspired to be. Jake took a deep breath. The time had come to face his past, and it felt daunting yet exhilarating all at once. Would he seize the moment or let it slip through his fingers like sand? The exhibition awaited, brimming with possibility and hidden truths, and Jake was ready to embrace them. Jake felt the weight of that gaze pinning him in place, a mixture of dread and defiance battling for control. Memories bubbled to the surface, years of ridicule disguised as jokes, moments when he had stood silent while doubt filled the space around him like a thick fog. This was more than just an encounter. This was a manifestation of his insecurities, a direct challenge that gripped him tightly. "Is that really yours?" The classmate's voice dripped with condescension, as if inspecting a curious specimen under a microscope. Jake's heart raced. The taunting tone was familiar. Mind from the past, he believed he had moved beyond. But here, in this moment, he had a choice. He could retreat into the shadows of self-doubt, become the boy they used to mock, or he could step into the light and reveal the man he had fought so hard to become. Taking another deep breath, Jake turned to face his critic fully. "Yes, it is," he stated, leaning into that truth with an unfamiliar strength. "These photographs represent something significant to me, moments I saw and wanted to share." He chipped away at the outer shell, revealing conviction cutting through the layers of insecurity. Unsure how to defend himself further, Jake instinctively glanced at the crowd. He saw nods of encouragement and friendly smiles, people who had taken the time to appreciate his work, who were willing to engage with him. That flicker of self-doubt dimmed slightly, replaced by understanding that this moment wasn't solely about him anymore. It was about his art, the stories he brought to life through the lens. His classmate's expression shifted, curiosity seeped into the bemused facade. "What did you think when you took this one?" he asked, gesturing toward a photograph that had been the centerpiece of discussions all night, capturing a moment of raw emotion during a thunderstorm. Jake felt a rush of adrenaline. This was the opening he had hoped for, a chance to share his passion rather than hide from it. "In that moment, I felt the vulnerability of nature. It reminded me of how fragile everything can be yet how beautiful it is at the same time," he replied, his voice gaining momentum as he described his thought process while capturing the shot, and the feelings that welled up within him, how that interplay of light and darkness mirrored his own internal struggles. The classmate listened, no longer the threat he had been just moments before. The tension in Jake began to ease as he articulated the depth behind his work. It felt liberating to wield his voice like a weapon against the insecurities that haunted him. "That's deep," came the unexpected reply, and Jake could hear a tone of respect creeping in. Maybe there was room for change, even for those who once cast him aside. As the conversation unfolded, Jake realized that he was no longer just reclaiming his passion, he was gradually piecing together his identity. With each exchange, all the heaviness that had held him captive slipped further away. He felt lighter, sturdier, as if having shed a skin that no longer served him. But beneath that thrill, a whisper of anxiety stayed. What happened after this moment of clarity? He had confronted his past, but there were still mountains to climb. The exhibition was just the beginning. A single step on a long path filled with uncertainties, a path requiring more vulnerability, more courage. As he waved goodbye to his classmate, a spark ignited within him. This was not the end of the journey but merely a turning point. Jake took a moment to soak in the ambience, surrounded by visitors, the hum of admiration swirling around him like music. But a deeper question lingered: would this new confidence hold up against the inevitable challenges ahead? What other insecurities lay hidden, waiting to resurface? Determined to uncover the answers ahead, Jake cast one last look at his photographs, each one a beacon of possibility. He took a deep breath and prepared himself for the next chapter in his life, the true test of who he was becoming. The air buzzed with energy as Jake stepped out of the venue, the echoes of admiration fading behind him. Each step felt charged. He wasn't just walking away from a display of his work. He was exiting a cocoon of self-doubt. Yet, uncertainty gnawed at him, lurking just beneath the surface. The applause had been intoxicating, but he could not shake the feeling that the real trial had only just begun. As he strode through the dimly lit street, shadows danced around him, merging with his pervasive thoughts. Jake's mind fragmented into a whirlpool of possibilities and fears. He couldn't rely on a feel-good moment to cushion the reality that awaited him. He would face critiques that stung deeper than any childhood bully's barb, and he needed to prepare for that inevitability. He pulled out his phone and opened his notes app, a sanctuary for ideas both half-formed and bright. The empty screen beckoned him, daring him to fill its void. He began typing feverishly. What do I want to say with my photography? How will I express myself without falling back into the shadows? The questions spilled out, blunt confessions of the fear that still taunted him. He paused, biting his lip, awareness washing over him. Art wasn't merely a reflection of reality. It was an avenue for truth, a raw exposure that could either uplift or exploit vulnerabilities. Where did he stand? Jake hesitated, then continued to type. I want to evoke emotion, document life, but it can't be about validation. It must be my voice. The weight of his intent anchored him. He was shedding the need for approval, discovering the value of authenticity over compliance. The desire to be accepted had once driven him, but now, with each keystroke, he felt a shift. He was embarking on a new journey, one where he no longer sought affirmation from people cloaked in condescension but instead carved out a space for himself. As he sat in a nearby cafe, the dim light highlighting the specks of dust spiraling in the air, he made the decision. Jake needed mentorship, someone experienced who could guide him, sharpen his vision, and perhaps introduce him to the treacherous waters of the art world. It felt risky, exposing himself to another scrutiny, but he couldn't traverse this journey alone. Searching online, he stumbled upon a local artist known for her bold work and unyielding voice. Her biography hinted at struggles that mirrored his own. Criticism, doubts, transformation. Jake hesitated but felt the magnetism of her journey pull him in. This could be his chance, a way to confront the specter of his past head-on and glean the tools necessary for his growth. Sending an email that night took courage. It was a small action, one that felt monumental in the face of his fears. "I'm looking for guidance," he typed, pouring his heart into a vulnerable ask. "I want to learn, not just as an artist but as a person." With a quick click, he sent the message into the universe, feeling the immediate pang of anxiety mingle with hope. Hours turned into days, and as he waited for a response, the distance from his exhibition felt both comforting and terrifying. Could he sustain the newfound confidence? Would he truly be able to transform not just his art but himself? His phone buzzed one afternoon, the screen lighting up with a reply. Heart racing, he opened it and read the words, "I appreciate your courage to reach out. Let us meet." In that moment, anticipation surged through him. This was it, an opportunity that could redefine everything. But just as quickly, doubt crept back in. What if he failed? What if he wasn't enough? Jake took a deep breath, pushing through the unsettling thoughts. Deep within, he knew now that it was time to face those doubts, time to confront the shadows that had haunted him for too long. Engaging in this mentorship would be his next real test, one that could unleash either fear or newfound strength. Would he embrace the challenges waiting ahead? Or would he falter, retreating into familiar insecurities? The moment was upon him, and Jake realized that the answers lay beyond this encounter, threaded through the fabric of his willingness to grow. With a resolve ignited, he prepared for the meeting, each moment echoing a truth he had yet to fully understand. The road to self-discovery was winding, and Jake was ready to navigate it, one step at a time, knowing that something extraordinary awaited him on the other side. Jake arrived at the small art studio, uncertainty swirling in the pit of his stomach. Bright sunlight streamed through the large windows, illuminating canvases bursting with vivid colors. The vibrant energy of the space contradicts his internal turmoil. He stood for a moment at the door, taking a deep breath to steady himself before stepping inside. The artist, a woman named Mara, was setting up her latest piece, her focus unwavering. She turned at the sound of his entrance, her intense gaze softening as she smiled. "Jake, right? I'm glad you could make it." Her voice was warm, yet riddled with the authority that only experience could cultivate. "Thank you for meeting me," he replied, his voice steadier than he felt. "Let us get to work then." Mara motioned for him to follow her to a table scattered with brushes and paint tubes. As he approached, he felt a mixture of excitement and trepidation. This was an opportunity he had sought, but the stakes felt perilously high. "Tell me about your work." Her question was direct, cutting through the chaos in his mind. Jake hesitated, grappling with his newfound intentions. How could he convey the depth of his aspirations without collapsing back into the fear of judgment? I want to share emotions through photography. I'm tired of seeking approval," he finally said, the words tasting foreign yet liberating. Mara nodded, her posture attentive. "That's good. But it's not enough just to want it. Why do you think it's important to convey those emotions?" He fumbled for an answer. "Art should mean something, right? It's an expression. But sometimes it feels selfish." Mara narrowed her eyes, considering him before speaking. "You're thinking about yourself rather than the impact you want to make. Art doesn't exist in a vacuum. If you want to evoke emotion, you must first connect with your own." Her words struck a nerve. Glaring conceit had once clouded his perspective. Now, he recognized a truth that demanded acknowledgement. His self-doubt had discouraged him from digging into the emotions that birthed his art. He needed to reclaim those parts of himself that had long been buried. "Okay," he said, resolution creeping back in. "How do I do that?" Mara picked up a camera from the table. "Start by exploring. Take photos of what moves you, what resonates. Don't focus on the final product. Just document, get lost in the act. Allow yourself to listen to your instincts. A flicker of enthusiasm ignited within him. He could allow himself to be vulnerable, to reconnect with his passions without the pressure of judgment looming over him. But another fear blossomed. What if he rediscovered his voice only to find it unsupported by technical ability? Mara seemed to read his thoughts. Don't hide behind the fear of failing. Every artist starts somewhere. The only difference between a successful project and an unsuccessful one is the willingness to keep going despite setbacks. He nodded, digesting her insight. This was a person who had navigated her own struggles, and now she had the power to guide him through his. As they worked through the afternoon, Mara's critiques were pointed yet nurturing, illuminating hidden assumptions in his work that stifled his growth. Jake found himself challenged to think beyond the frame, to consider the emotional landscape of his subjects. Each critique solidified the notion that he was on the brink of transformation. The art door creaked open wide as he took tentative steps within. When the session concluded, Jake felt stripped bare yet invigorated. He had delved into the heart of his self-doubt, confronting it head-on. There were countless layers to peel away, but he could already see the currents of his journey shifting towards authenticity. "Remember, Jake," Mara said, her voice piercing through his swirling thoughts, "every artist faces rejection. What you do with that rejection defines your journey." A sense of clarity emerged. The fear of failure no longer felt insurmountable, it was merely part of a path he now intended to embrace. As he left the studio, the evening sky hung low with hues of orange and purple, mirroring the palette of his thoughts. One question lingered in the back of his mind: what would he discover about himself in the days ahead? The prospect was both thrilling and intimidating. Tomorrow wouldn't just be another day. It would be a step toward a rebirth. Jake felt the pull of uncertainty give way to possibility, igniting a fierce determination within him. On the cusp of this transformation, he resolved to venture deeper into his emotions, hungry for revelations that might await just beyond his current understanding. What strengths might unfold if only he dared to explore them further. The unfolding narrative of his artistic evolution was about to take its next twist, and he was ready to meet it head-on. The next morning arrived with a hesitant light breaking through Jake's bedroom window, spilling soft rays onto his cluttered desk. He sat up, a new determination stirring within him. Today would be different. He had resolved to shed the layers that had long weighed him down and instead embrace the exploration Mara had suggested. Emotions would reign free, and in this newfound freedom he would rediscover art. He grabbed his camera from the shelf, its weight familiar yet electrifying in his grip. With the sun stretching wide, Jake decided on a destination: an old abandoned train yard he had often passed but never dared to enter. He believed it would provide a stark backdrop, embodying both decay and beauty, resonating with the emotions that had simmered beneath the surface of his life for too long. As he stepped outside, a rush of adrenaline coursed through him. Each footfall felt as if it echoed in rhythm with his heartbeat, compelling him to confront his fears. He was not merely documenting. He was engaging with life, allowing the world to speak to him through its textures and shadows. Through the narrow streets that wound toward the yard, he paid attention to everything: the subtle conversations of the wind, the faint scent of blooming flowers, and the chatter of children playing nearby. Upon reaching the train yard, Jake stood at the entrance, marveling at how nature had reclaimed this man-made space. Rusted rails twisted like veins through the landscape, while vibrant moss and wildflowers crept through the cracks. Heart racing, he raised his camera, hoping to capture not just the aesthetics, but also the narratives hidden within the frame. Each click of the shutter drew him deeper into his own emotional landscape. He felt the stories of those trains, the journeys they had taken, the lives they had touched swirling in his mind. He began to reflect on his own travels, interrupted by failures and regrets, and the weight of expectations that had stifled creativity. With every photo he took, feelings surged to the surface: regret, longing, and a quiet resolve. The act of expressing these emotions through the lens felt like a revelation, morphing his anxiety into layers of depth he had sought to convey in his art. He pressed on, experimenting with angles and lighting, challenging himself to capture the untold stories of this once bustling place. Yet, Just as enthusiasm reached its peak, doubt reared its head, rattling his newfound focus. What if these images didn't resonate? What if this exploration only led to more rejection? In that moment, Jake lowered his camera, the weight of insecurity pressing against his chest. But Mara's voice echoed in his mind, every artist faces rejection. He drew a deep breath, reminding himself that he was not chasing instant validation. Rather, he was unearthing his truth. Repositioning himself, he embraced the emotional turmoil rather than allowing it to incapacitate him. As he resumed taking photographs, he focused less on achieving perfection and more on the authenticity behind each capture. Each click became a declaration, an affirmation of his journey. The sun hung low in the sky when he finally retreated from the train yard. The once overwhelming feelings now transformed into a sense of profound clarity. He scrolled through the photos on his camera, surprised by the raw essence of emotion he had managed to capture. There was a simmering thread of connection that surged through every image, igniting hope and passion within him. Returning home, Jake felt an unfamiliar lightness. Exposure to his authentic self had stripped away pretense and revealed nothing but purpose. But as he reviewed his work, apprehension crept in once more. What if his next step, the decision of sharing these emotions, became an echo of past failures? This new venture promised insight but also uncertainty. He needed guidance on how to navigate this pivotal moment, and the thought of reaching out to Mara filled him with a mix of anticipation and dread. With only one choice before him, Jake's resolve hardened. He would share his experience and art with her, risking vulnerability for growth. The prospect of facing her critique loomed large, but something within him whispered that disappointment could be transformed into resilience. Armed with a sense of purpose, the time had come to confront the doubts that had shadowed him too long. Would Mara see the potential in his work, or would this be another episode of exposure met with rejection? The moment of truth was drawing closer, and Jake was determined to face it head-on. Jake paced his small living room, the wooden floor creaking under his restless feet. The camera felt both like an extension of himself and a weight anchoring him to uncertainty. He had poured his soul into the images captured in the train yard, yet returning home stirred a whirlwind of trepidation. The thrill of creation often faded in the brittle hours of reflection. Now, with the sun retreating behind the horizon, he grappled with the gnawing question. Was there merit in what he had produced? He could almost hear Mara's voice in his head, encouraging him to leap without knowing where he would land. But safety, that deceptive sanctuary, beckoned with warm arms. After all, sharing those images meant bearing his vulnerabilities, exposing his deepest fears. Jake knew it wouldn't only be his art laid bare, but also the scars and traces of his past questions about his capabilities. His worth throbbed in the forefront of his mind. Resisting the urge to dine on self-doubt, he reminded himself of the emotional revelation he had experienced earlier. The authenticity sparked within him challenged the notion that art must always adhere to recognizable standards. It drove a fire into his belly, propelling him to speak his truth. But could he convince Mara, or anyone for that matter, of that truth? He settled on the couch and took a deep breath, flicking through the photos again, forcing his eyes to dissect each image carefully this time, not just as a creator but as an audience. Each capture told a story rich with emotion, a snapshot of both beauty and decay. Glancing at the clock on his wall, he noted it was time to reach out to her. No more putting it off. Anxiety flickered within him, the pulse of hesitation, yet clarity pierced through. Each moment spent grasping at safety would stall the momentum he had begun to build. With a heart poised between fear and ambition, Jake opened his laptop and crafted a message to Mara. His fingers flew over the keyboard, an outpouring of thoughts that stripped away pretense. I've been working on something. I feel like it represents where I am right now, he wrote, pausing to consider. This was no longer just about seeking approval. It was an invitation, a bridge he dared to extend. He attached the most potent images, letting his instinct guide the selection. After hitting send, Jake closed his laptop and sank back into the couch. The digital curtain had drawn back, exposing his raw state to the world. For the first time, he realized that he had chosen to step into a game that transcended art. He was engaging in self-exposure, a critical pilgrimage toward personal transformation. This newfound acceptance of his vulnerabilities could ultimately unlock pathways he hadn't fathomed before. But even this small victory ushered in another wave of apprehension. Jake's mind raced. What if he overwhelmed Mara? What if she dismissed him entirely? Would she resonate with the emotions he hoped to convey? Questions pelted him, triggering waves of anxiety that undermined his courage. Moments turned into a distant stretch of silence. The clock ticked defiantly in the corner. Within the hushed space, Jake recognized that the shadows of doubt needed to be acknowledged rather than feared. He recalled the beauty he had witnessed in the train yard, the very essence of decay and rebirth. This clarity ignited a resolve. He could no longer evade confrontation with what lies ahead. Just as he started crafting an additional note to follow up, a notification chimed on his phone. It was a reply from Mara. Heart thrumming in his chest, Jake hesitated, glimpsing at the screen with a mix of hope and dread. He prepared himself, stilling his breathing, ready or so he thought to face whatever awaited him on the other side of that message. The screen glowed ominously, teasing transformation. He tapped it open, curiosity and fear swirling within him. What would she say? Would this be a moment of validation or another encounter with disappointment? The stakes felt monumental as he braced himself for the impact of her words. Jake stared at the glowing screen, his heart betraying his calm facade. Mara's reply was succinct, laden with the promise of judgment. Yet, as he read her words, they washed over him with unexpected warmth. Jake, this is powerful. Your work captures a raw truth that's hard to find. I'd love to discuss it more. The weight of anticipation he had carried felt lighter, but not entirely lifted. Despite the praise, a lingering tremor of doubt fluttered in his chest. Was this engagement a true reflection of his talent? Or did Mara see something in him that he couldn't yet see in himself? Over the next few days, this push and pull between confidence and insecurity played out as Jake prepared for their meeting. As he meticulously revisited the train yard images, he began dissecting each shot with the eye of a critic. He noticed details he'd overlooked before: the interplay of light and shadow, the emotion captured in fleeting moments. With each realization, a flicker of pride ignited within him. Perhaps his art did have merit after all. A distinct voice worth listening to. Yet, as their meeting approached, his excitement became intertwined with anxiety. The notion of facing Mara, the very individual he sought validation from, made him acutely aware of his imperfections. Tension simmered just beneath the surface, threatening to bubble over at any moment. Jake knew he was on the cusp of something significant, an opportunity for feedback that could either propel him forward or plunge him deeper into insecurity. The night before their meeting, a storm rumbled outside, matching the turbulence inside him. Jake sat at his desk, his laptop open to a blank document. A proposal for the conversation sat unfinished, filled with half-formed ideas and struggling self-assessments. He needed clarity, a strategy to guide him through what lay ahead. Instead of writing about himself, he decided to confront the elements of his art. The train yard, with its rusting metal and graffiti-streaked cars, emerged in his mind, revealing the core of what he aimed to express. It was a conversation between resilience and decline, a canvas that told stories of both pain and beauty. Herein lay a chance to understand himself as both the artist and the subject. He made notes, organizing his thoughts around themes of decay, rebirth, and finding beauty in despair. Jake paused, recognizing a pattern emerging. His work mirrored his own journey, an odyssey through self-doubt, a struggle to find meaning and purpose in creative expression. This monologue became a part of the narrative he intended to share with Mara, not only about the images but also about the transition within himself. On the day of their meeting, Jake stood before the mirror, scrutinizing the reflection that looked back at him. With each passing second, he ruminated over the path he had taken, his evolution from a passive observer to an active creator. Today, he wouldn't simply present his work. He'd present himself. The cafe they had chosen buzzed with life, an electric atmosphere that felt both exhilarating and intimidating. As he approached the table where Mara waited, Jake's heart raced. He felt a rush of anticipation intertwined with fear. Would she see the growth he felt within, the transformative process that had only begun? When their eyes met, he sensed both their shared excitement and unease. Jake took a deep breath, ready to dive deeper into not just his work, but also into a deeper understanding of who he was becoming. Clenching his fists beneath the table, he realized this was more than an artistic critique. It was a confrontation with his own worth, a challenge to break the barriers that held him back. I want to talk about these images, he started, each syllable echoing the commitment to unveil not only his art but also the person behind it. What awaited him in Ms. Mara's response? Would it affirm his path towards self-discovery or send him spiraling back to that familiar abyss of doubt? Mara's gaze held steady as Jake unfolded the narrative behind his images, the words flowing from him in a rush of vulnerability. With each detail he shared the inspiration behind the shots. The emotions tied to them. He realized he was constructing a bridge between himself and the validation he so desperately craved. The cafe around them faded into a soft hum, the bustling patrons mere shadows as he focused solely on her response. Mara nodded, her expression shifting between intrigue and contemplation. You have an exceptional ability, Jake, to connect decay with beauty. It's a theme that resonates deeply. Each word was like a lifeline, pulling him from the depths of his self-doubt. Yet Jake remained hyper-aware of the flickers in her eyes. He could almost sense her weighing the merit of his work against the expectations that loomed. As he opened himself up, letting the layers of his insecurity peel away, something within him began to solidify. He articulated the themes of loss, resilience, and rebirth, ideas that felt both raw and uncomfortable. Sharing that vision felt like exposing a hidden wound, an act of bravery. He noticed a change in his own feelings, a blend of exhilaration and apprehension. Jake, what you're doing is not just photography, it's storytelling. Mara's words hung in the air, challenging him to confront the implications of her statement. Could he truly see himself as a storyteller? The idea felt abstract yet intoxicating. It opened doors he hadn't known existed. What do you mean by that? He asked, leaning in, curiosity igniting his determination. Every image carries a narrative. Your train yard communicates something profound about our isolation and the beauty of finding hope despite it. Jake's heart swelled at her insight, an affirmation that revealed a newfound layer of understanding in his journey. Yet, the admiration soon began probing deeper questions. Was he prepared to explore and evolve beyond just capturing images? Their conversation meandered through critiques and affirmations, sparking a flame of excitement within him that he thought long extinguished. But, with every word exchanged, shadows began to creep back in. Could he translate this affirmation into ongoing improvement and deeper creativity? Mara shifted the topic gently. How do you envision taking this forward? What do you want to say to the world? The question struck him like a thunderbolt, each thrum resonating with his suppressed aspirations. He had always wanted to be a part of something larger, to inspire through his work, but a nagging fear rooted him in place. I think I need to find my voice. Really? The admission surprised him, both for its candor and the weight it carried. In that moment of hesitation, he realized he hadn't just been hiding behind his camera. He had been warding off the very challenge of confronting his artistic and personal aspirations. Mara leaned back, an encouraging smile gracing her lips. That's a powerful first step, Jake. But you have to be willing to let go of the fear of judgment to truly find it. Each word could be a lighthouse guiding him away from the treacherous waters of insecurity. His heart raced. This was the voice of counsel he wanted, but it demanded more from him than he had ever given. As their dialogue continued, Jake felt the weight of self-imposed expectations expand. The more he thought about what lay ahead, the more urgent it became to confront these fears. He had spent so long stuck in a cycle of uncertainty, leaning on fleeting moments of praise to buoy his spirit. Mara's final remarks struck a resonant chord. Remember, creativity is a process. It's about exploration, and sometimes that means going into uncharted territory. Jake's mind buzzed, ideas clashing like thunderclouds within him. The path to realizing his potential was peppered with risks and revelations. He understood then that every great artist had to face their own demons. The real challenge lay in embracing that journey. As he left the cafe, the realization washed over him. The real work had only just begun. He was no longer simply a passive observer, he was at the precipice of transformation. But the storm inside him wasn't over. It was a battle between what he had always known and what he could become. The moment of truth had arrived. Would he embrace the uncertainty and seek out the raw, unfiltered creativity within him, or retreat to the safety of what he already knew? Jake stood under the warm Friday sun, a gentle breeze whispering through his hair as he gazed at the local art gallery's door. Today marked a pivotal moment in his journey, his first exhibition. Each heartbeat echoed with the weight of anticipation, yet instead of dread, a sense of belonging swelled deep within him. He wasn't merely showcasing his work. He was laying bare his story, a narrative reflecting his evolution and resilience. Revisiting his photographs, now framed and prominently displayed, each piece told a chapter of his experience, their richness capturing the beauty found even in decay. The train yard images radiated authenticity, embodying the raw connection he discovered with himself and his surroundings. No longer encumbered by self-doubt, Jake felt invigorated by this newfound role as a storyteller, a title he felt he had finally earned. As the clock struck the hour, guests began to trickle in, filling the gallery with a vibrant energy that resonated throughout the space. Jake stood near the entrance, nervous yet emboldened, preparing for this moment where he would finally confront the world not as the lazy boy trapped in complacency, but as a man who had chosen to rise from the shadows. When attendees stopped to engage with his photographs, Jake felt the warmth of their curiosity and appreciation. Each compliment validated the journey he had undertaken, a powerful confirmation that he wasn't simply seeking approval, but engaging people with shared emotions. A familiar face appeared in the crowd, his father, standing slightly apart, observing silently. For years, Jake had anticipated this moment, dreading it yet inspiring to overcome his father's discerning gaze. As their eyes met, a mixture of hope and trepidation swirled in Jake's heart. Would he finally witness the pride he longed to see? "Jake, this is incredible," his dad said, coming closer with an uncharacteristic smile illuminating his features. "I had no idea you saw the world this way." "Thanks, Dad. I've learned a lot," Jake replied, a hint of vulnerability lacing his words. Felt rewarding, this connection with his father, a redemption of sorts. He realized that in reclaiming his passion, he was not just transforming himself. He was rekindling the bond with his family, sharing parts of himself that had long been overshadowed. As the evening progressed, the feedback continued to pour in, guests intrigued by his artistic vision, drawn into the emotions woven into each photograph. With each interaction, Jake's confidence solidified. He could articulate his intent, engage others, and leave room for dialogue. He was no longer afraid of judgment. He was actively redefining his relationship with art and acceptance. As the event drew to a close, and patrons began to depart, Jake stood by his installation, reflecting on his transformation. There was validation and recognition, yes, but more profoundly, he found satisfaction in claiming his identity. The journey showed him that vulnerability was not a weakness but a strength, a testament to growth. His phone chimed. A message from Mara appeared. "You did it, Jake. Impressive work tonight. You've grown so much." The text evoked a swell of gratitude. It cemented the reality Jake had embraced. Embracing fear and uncertainty opened doors to growth he had once deemed impossible. With the gallery now quieting down, Jake noticed the walls adorned with his photos instead of the stark emptiness he once feared. They represented more than mere snapshots. They stamped the beginning of a new chapter where he was defining the narrative. In this space, free from the shackles of self-doubt, Jake felt a solid confidence bolster his resolve for the future. He had conquered the inertia that once held him captive, proving to himself that he was more than a product of his circumstances. With dreams twinkling in his eyes and a narrative unfolding ahead of him, he stepped forward passionately into a life brimming with creativity. Jake inhaled deeply, the scent of art, possibility, and newfound purpose washing over him. This journey wasn't merely about achieving a successful exhibition. It was about embracing who he had become, a storyteller, an artist redefining the essence of his existence. He was ready now for whatever lay ahead, determined to explore further, grow deeper, and capture life authentically, each moment a testament to the power of change. As he exited the gallery, a sense of urgency surged within him. It was time to carry this momentum beyond the walls he had inhabited for so long. Today marked a beginning, not an end. Jake resolved to continue sharing his narrative, exploring life's nuances, and connecting with the world around him. Transformative journeys could inspire others, each click of the camera bringing these stories to life. Every success solidified his recognition as an artist, yet Jake carried the profound realization forward. It was his courage to embrace vulnerability that truly defined his success. Now, with a heart full of ambition, Jake turned toward the horizon, ready to write the next chapter of his life, each moment a reflection of the beauty of transformation. So, you need to subscribe now to follow Jake's evolving journey and not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to support this powerful narrative and fuel the algorithm, making sure more people get inspired by transformations like Jake's. Comment your reactions and theories about Jake's growth and what you think his next steps should be. Let's engage. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who are seeking encouragement in their own journeys. Together, we can forge a community of inspiration and growth.